Welcome back to Trucking the Seven Seas. This is episode number 43, and in this episode, we're going to go over week 13 of the Night Transportation Lease Operator Program. We stay on the West Coast this week, and we don't hit much weather, so it's pretty smooth sailing overall. At the end of the video, I'm also going to go over how I manage my fuel expenses and when I fuel up and how I fuel up, so we'll go over that at the end of the video. If you are new to this channel, welcome. I started this channel in order to show exactly what truck drivers make. We started as a company driver working for Night Transportation, and now we have moved on to a lease operator working for Night Transportation. I show all of the loads I take, what the revenue is, what the expenses were, and what my net cash flow was, and I compile all of this information and I put it into a spreadsheet that I share with you at the end of every video. So if this is a topic that interests you, follow the channel. But last episode we left off in Pasco, Washington, so we picked up a load in Pasco, Washington, and it was headed to Southern California, but we're going to relay it in the Fairview yard. So let's go. Okay, so we just did a reset in the Fairview yard. Then after the reset, we got dispatched on a load picking up in Lebanon, Oregon, and headed to Sonora, California. Let's go. Okay, we got a yard jockey again today. Okay, so we dropped this one out here in Sonora, California. Then we got dispatched on another one picking up in Chinese Camp, California, which is just down the road. And we're headed to Rancho Cucamonga, California, which is Los Angeles. Let's go. dropped the load in Rancho Cucamonga, California, then got dispatched on another one picking up in Rialto, California, which is just down the road, and we're headed to Tracy, California, which is fine by me. I'm okay running California right now because the weather is just not good here, and there's snow all around, so I'm fine just staying in California for now. Let's go to Tracy. Okay, so we dropped the load in Tracy, California, then got dispatched on another one picking up in Crockett, California, and headed to Fairview, Oregon. Let's go. Okay, so after the Fairview load, we got dispatched on another one picking up in Portland, Oregon, and headed to McCarran, Nevada. However, that load is not going to make the paycheck, so it's spreadsheet time. For week 13, we did 5 loads, and in those 5 loads, we got 2,602 miles, and we were paid a total of $4,077 for an average of $1.57 per mile. Fuel expense, we fueled up 8 times, and in those 8 times, we paid $1,802 for an average of 69 cents per mile. Other expenses, MRP 130, Qualcomm 13, Bobtail 692, physical damage 69, occupational acts of policy 34, permits 42, pre-pass 350, truck payment 450, scales 1350, fuel and mile tax $78, and a lease security deposit $400 for a total of $941 for an average of 36 cents per mile. Totals for week 13, total expenses were $2,743 for an average of $1.05 per mile. Total revenue was $4,077 for an average of $1.57 per mile. That brings our net settlement to $1,334 for an average of 51 cents per mile. Total since starting the program, we've driven a total of 29,210 miles. Total expenses were $30,083 for an average of $1.03 per mile, and that is my cost per mile right there. Total revenue was $50,091 for an average of $1.71 per mile. Net cash flow was $20,008 for an average of 68 cents per mile, and if you were to minus the lease security deposit, it would go up to 75 cents per mile. If I had been a company driver during this period, I would have made $15,773 for an average of 54 cents per mile, and if I had been an owner-operator who owned his truck outright, I would have made $26,058 at 89 cents per mile. Averages and other information. Average weekly paycheck is $1,539. Average weekly miles is 2,247. Total fuel cost is $16,609 at 57 cents per mile. Total maintenance costs were $1,988 for 7 cents per mile. If I kept this up for a 52-week period, I'd make $80,032, and I get a total of 116,840 miles. We have been employed 91 days for 13 weeks, taking 12 days off, 79 days on duty, taken 53 total loads, and the average load length is 551 miles. All right, looking at the volatility graph right here, this just shows volatility of a lease driver versus company driver. Lease is red, company's blue, and it just shows how much more volatile a lease driver is and directly compares the weekly paycheck of a company driver versus a lease driver. And you can see more or less the lease, as a lease driver, I've made pretty much the same, more or less, on most weeks. There were a couple of weeks where I made less, and then right here though, there was just a big old paycheck where I had a very good week. And that's pretty much been the difference between a lease and company driver. One good week has pretty much made all the difference in the world, where I got like a $5,000 paycheck. And recently, though, it's been pretty stagnant. Um, Past few weeks, I've only made probably slightly more than a company driver, but not all that much more. So just interesting note there. And as you can see right there, this week I actually would have made more as a company driver versus a lease driver. It's hard to see, but the red right there is below the blue, meaning I would have made more as a company driver this week. So, and down below that, you see total company pay versus total lease pay. This just shows total company pay versus total lease pay in aggregate. So all of the weeks combined, how much more or less a lease operator makes versus company driver. And this last data point right there is also right here. So as a lease operator, I made $20,000, and if I had been a company driver, I would have made $15,773. And that's the last data point right there. It just shows pay in aggregate, comparing total company pay versus total lease pay. And currently, I am making more than a company driver, not a whole lot more. And it's been relatively stagnant and parallel at this point, which is kind of interesting. Um, Hopefully that changes, but yeah, as of right now, that's total company pay versus total lease pay in aggregate on a graph. So hopefully that's a good visual for you guys. Okay, yeah, so a couple housekeeping notes this week. Very high fuel expense, so we fueled up 8 times here, and we paid 69 cents per mile. That's not normal. That's quite high. Last week was only 45 cents per mile, so it fluctuates quite a bit. Still no maintenance expense, so I don't know if the B service is going to get charged, because those should be covered. So we'll see how that goes. But at the moment, no maintenance expense for that, and we'll see if I ever get charged. So one thing to note on the fuel expenses, some people in the comment section have been saying you should fuel up at the end of every week, so that way it balances out in the paychecks. So that way I'm not fueling up like I don't have a very high fuel bill this week and a low fuel bill next week. And I'll be honest, I just don't do that, and I don't really care about that, because I just look at it over the course of weeks and months. So the fact that this was a high fuel bill is not totally relevant to me, and I don't really care about that. As long as, I'm keeping the fuel bill fairly low, which is currently 57 cents per mile. I don't really care when I fuel up. I mean, the fuel is still in the gas tank next week, and I don't look at it paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I do on this spreadsheet, but as a philosophy, I just don't care when I fuel up, and I don't particularly care that this week I had a high fuel cost and last week I had a low fuel cost. It's just not relevant to me, because I like to look at it in aggregate. So for me, this is the biggest number for me right here, just the overall. And the fact that, yeah, this week was pretty bad, I don't really care about that. It's just not totally relevant to me. As long as the overall is good or okay, I mean, I'll let you be the judge of whether that's good or bad. But this is the only number I actually care about, is the overall. And because of that, I don't particularly care when I have a high fuel bill one week and a low fuel bill next week. All I care about is how much I'm spending overall on fuel, which it is actually right there, which is 57 cents per mile. And that's really all I care about. And 57 cents per mile isn't too bad, because I'm on the West Coast here. So 57 cents per mile, my truck gets about 7 miles per gallon. So that's about 370, 380 for fuel, which on the West Coast isn't too bad. I mean, California is like $5 a gallon or something like that. And yeah, I mean, that's a lot lower than the West Coast average, I would say. I fuel up a lot in Nevada, so that's kind of my strategy, is just to fuel up in Nevada as much as possible, because that's where, the cheapest fuel is on the West Coast and places I've been running. I've been running Oregon a lot, Washington a lot, and California a lot. And whenever I can, if I'm passing through Nevada, I make sure to fuel up in Nevada, and that's about the best I can do, because I'm just running California specifically a lot. So the fuel bill, 57 cents per mile, is not too bad considering where I'm running. And yeah, as far as fueling up at the end of every week, you're not going to see me do that, and these are going to continue being pretty volatile, because I honestly just don't care what the fuel expense is from week to week. I like to look at it big picture overall. And yeah, so just a note there. Another note, these $53 fuel ups, so these are actually DEF fuel ups, so sometimes I have to register the DEF fuel up as a different fuel up, especially at the terminals. So I'll fuel up the regular diesel fuel, and then I have to do a whole new transaction for the def. So this fuel up and this fuel up were probably on the same transaction. I just had to do a separate transaction. I can't really tell though. It doesn't say on my um, like on my settlement, my the settlement paycheck. Here's what you spent every week. It doesn't say, so I've been counting it as a separate fuel up, but it actually really isn't. It's mostly that's just a def fuel up. So just a note there, and that's just sort of how I handle my fuel bill and how and when I fuel up. Fuel up a lot in Nevada, and I don't particularly care when I fuel up as long as I am able to keep track of the overall. So okay, yeah. So there's week 13. Not great. High fuel bill. That's not good. But we're going to keep rolling here. Still working on the loan. No real updates. Actually haven't heard anything from anyone yet. I'm just playing it patient and just seeing where that goes. But if there's any updates, I'll keep you updated on that. Next week, which is currently this week as I'm filming it, so week 14, I have some pretty bad maintenance issues. So actually not too bad, but it just takes quite a few days to get fixed. So I can tell you next week is gonna be a pretty bad week. So stay tuned for that. And other than that, that's about it. So, but that will do it for this episode. If you're interested in truck driving, there's a link in the comment section down below. Just click that link, fill out your information, and Driver Recruiter will get a hold of you. And if you are interested in this spreadsheet or any of the other spreadsheets I've done in the past, they are available in the About section. You can click on them and then download them however you want, use them however you want, and feel free to do so. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.